Investors of commercial properties or developers overreached. They don't tend to be as emotionally invested. The terms on the mortgages are shorter. There's more cash and equity involved. So this is more due to the economic climate, especially on the retail end. We're having some retailers that we've seen for years going out of business, some favorite brands. And so that's starting to impact shopping centers, and then that in turn is making investors and lenders a little skittish to lend. So
in LA, we're a big market for that, right? Commercial real estate and development, one of the biggest markets in the world.
Huge office market, big retail market, yeah, substantial industrial market related to the ports.
Is there a lot of debt? Is there a problem with debt? Or would we see some skyscraper groups go bankrupt because of the debt problems?
It would depend. Well, I think there's been some concern. I know in LA there's been some changing of some office properties because the market had changed, and it's that their assumptions about the market changed. They thought, well, if the economy grows and rents go to this level, I can pay my debt, and then the economy changed on them. So it depends how long they've owned the property. It depends sort of like their own underwriting standards. So I think you're going to see some of that. It's a little early to see whether it's going to be sort of an overall trend. It's just in the beginning stages, I think.
The poor. There is a lot of substandard housing in Los Angeles,
right,
especially along the Figueroa corridor, and a lack of housing. I mean, there's a tremendous need for better housing and better standard of housings. What's it going to take in the real estate? You saw all this big growth in real estate, but it still remained a huge problem, the development in the poverty areas of Los Angeles. What's it going to take to change that?
I think government's going to have to step in with a different role. I think the problem so much isn't affordable housing, it's that there's lack of market rate housing. And when there's lack of market rate housing, prices for all types of housing rise. So people who are looking for affordable market rate housing crowded out the people that could only afford 30 or 50% of the median rent. And so that's had a huge effect. You have NIMBYism. You have a lot of people who live in communities that don't want to see higher density. You have people who sit on community groups that don't even want to discuss new projects coming into their area. So,
well, there is a big push in South LA, and a lot of the poverty providers are standing together to demand change. So hopefully we'll see that happen.
Right.
Tell me about Patrick Duffy. Did you know when you were 5 years old that you wanted to be a real estate guy? What got you into the business?
Well, I knew I couldn't be an actor because that name was already taken, so you get that a lot. I fell into it. When I went to University of California at San Diego, and I was an economics major, and the electives I took were in housing, and they were really interesting in applying economic theory to something that I could walk through, that I understood. We all have to live somewhere. So I started with a consulting firm more or less right out of college, and learned a lot under a gentleman I worked with, and worked for a home builder, worked for a developer, worked for a company that it was national in scope, and now work with a variety of different companies, a bunch of strategic alliances, and so every day's different.
And how about your family life growing up? Was this something where, and now with your family, do they go, oh, Patrick's in real estate? Is there a great deal of pride in the fact that you're a real estate consultant?
I would say in a way, because I am a California native. We were talking earlier in the green room, 7th generation, and I'm really proud of that. And growing up, my parents, to send us to college, would buy rental properties, hold in and fix them up, or pull out equity.
So there was a little real estate there in the background.
Scraping and painting.
A little bit in the DNA?
Yeah, there were a lot of weekends scraping and painting, and I prefer to hire it out because I'm not that good at it. But yeah, I certainly saw the importance of cash flow and long-term holding. My parents never flipped anything. They still own everything I think they bought before. So very conservative investing philosophy.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this time with us and telling us a little bit about LA real estate. We look forward to having you back again in the future.
I would like that very much.
Best of luck to you, Patrick.
Thank you. You too.
I'm Sharon Jimenez for LA Business Today.
So if you're like most Los Angelinos and you still can't buy property, you can still enjoy the city's great nightlife, which is working hard to earn your dollar.
And though the federal government is not likely to be helping our personal bottom lines, it doesn't appear that the really big industries like real estate and banking will have to go it alone. Bailout is the new hot word at the end of 2008 and the beginning of 2009.
For sure, economic rescue for property owners and banks. What's in it for the average Joe renter after the nightlife is over?
I guess Joe and Josephine, we need a feminine for Joe now that we've identified the name of the average American, can hope for a secure job. Maybe, if the bailouts work. I'm Sharon Jimenez.
And I'm Bob Jimenez. LA Business Today will continue to explore the economic possibilities for all of us. Thanks for being with us.
In the aftermath of a disaster, you may not be able to rely on your knowledge of your home. You might also not be able to rely on your guide dog. The dog may be injured, frightened, confused, panicky, and/or disoriented. Be prepared to calm your dog and to keep it confined and securely leashed and/or harnessed. If you use a cane, remember to keep it readily available to assist you around hazards and obstacles. Keep a spare by your bed and at all exit doors, as well as a spare leash for the dog. Ensure that your guide dog is microchipped and that their license and identification tag have current contact information. Guide dogs can accompany you to an emergency shelter. Just as you need to prepare an emergency kit for yourself, you need to have one for your dog. Ensure you have enough water, food, any medications they may require, and a first aid kit. A blanket, a rug, and favorite toy may help calm them as well. Keep your veterinarian's name and number in the kit. Vaccination records may be required at the shelter. Only you know what can prepare and assist you and your family during a disaster. Are you prepared? For additional information, please contact the Department on Disability or the Emergency Management Department by calling the numbers on the screen or by dialing 311.
Hi, I'm Shannon Lamert Park. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
the one that you have in front of you. We call them the one-pagers. We've revised that to include more information on the budget breakdown section, as well as the match section. So we'll be releasing that next week, probably on Tuesday. So hopefully you will see a revised and one-pager from then on out with more information on the costs and the match information. Also, the Bureau of Contract Administration is currently working on a contract provisions checklist, which will also include information on the Buy America requirements. That will be posted on the Public Works ConAd website and linked to the LA Recovery website for guidance to the departments preparing applications. We have, since last week's ad hoc committee meeting, there have been 4 applications submitted. As of today, we have 28 actual applications that have been submitted to the grant source for approximately $456 million. That would conclude my presentation.
Yeah, let me just ask, on the, I guess, the title list that's shown for today, how do you interpret when you read the document that says what the amount of the grant is, and then you have the identical amount for the match?
Well, in some cases, council member, there is a 50% match requirement. So if indeed you have, if we're requesting, let's say, $2 million, then the match requirement would be exactly the same $2 million. Hopefully, and it could be my mistake, but hopefully I'm showing the percentage as being 50% in the match column. I should also be showing that in the comment section where it shows either an equivalent match or a 50% match.
The document I'm referring to, is that one that you produce?
No, that's not one that I've prepared.
Okay.
It might be taken from this.
Because on this one, it shows the amount, and then it shows identical for the match, which I was trying to interpret. So if it's not your document, we'll
It's
figure out.
prepared by the CLA.
But most
And I
likely,
think the last one I had was May 7th. I don't know if you have the earlier one.
All right.
Most
We'll wait till we
likely-
get yours then.
yes, most likely that is. I can have one of these provided to you. I don't know if the CLA has a copy. Yes, most likely that CLA document is derived from the information that I include on the spreadsheet. So if it's incorrect, I will definitely look at that.
Okay.
It may simply be a 50% match, and maybe they just don't say that in the comments section.
Thank you.
All right, we'll start with the first item. I think 1A is part of 1F.
That's right, it's a duplicate. No, I'm requesting that Gretchen Hardison be able to give an overview of the Clean Cities.
Good morning. Gretchen Hardison, the Environmental Affairs Department. Thank you for this opportunity to give you a brief overview of the U.S. Department. Just pull the whole mic. Yeah, you keep pulling, it'll come. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. There we go. Good morning again. This is Gretchen Hardison with the Environmental Affairs Department. I'd like to take just a couple of minutes to give you a brief overview of the U.S. Department of Energy Clean Cities solicitation that's before you this morning. The intent of this grant solicitation is to expand the use of alternative fuel and advanced technology vehicles and their supporting fueling and maintenance facilities. Clean Cities, again, is a program of the U.S. Department of Energy that was begun in 1995, an association of local governments and other entities to foster the use and expand the use of alternative fuels for the primary intent of reducing reliance on petroleum fuels. The solicitation, again, is due May 29th, next Friday, and it includes incentive funding to cover the incremental cost, that is the cost difference between a traditionally fueled vehicle and an alternatively fueled vehicle, to fund the incremental cost of vehicle purchases, up to 50% of the cost of fueling stations and maintenance facilities that are required to utilize these vehicles. It also provides funding for training to make sure that those involved have the appropriate skills to use these fuels, public awareness and outreach programs, and project management. One of the requirements of this solicitation is to partner with a Clean Cities Coalition. And as you may recall, the Environmental Affairs Department does house the City of Los Angeles Clean Cities Coalition, which is basically equivalent to our Interagency Alternative Fuels Task Force. It's each department that has fleet vehicles is a member of the coalition, a primary stakeholder of the coalition. And we also coordinate with a few outside agencies, including the State Air Resources Board, South Coast AQMD, Southern California Gas Company and others who are interested in alternative fuels. Forgive me. So applications can be submitted by a local government entity, Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and/or a Clean Cities Coalition, but a Clean Cities Coalition must be a partner on the application. Any of those entities can be the lead. Applications must be a minimum of $5 million and a maximum of $15 million. And overall, there should be a 50% match requirement. 50.
Okay.
Thank you. So in order to meet the... sorry. Thank you very much. In order to meet the funding requirements, the maximum and minimums, you'll be seeing at least 3 separate applications for this solicitation from the city. One for the Port Clean Truck Program, and Port staff will speak about that. The one that I'll be speaking to is the combined solicitation, the combined application that has 4 departments represented. And then I believe Department of Water and Power will be submitting another application.
Okay.
Thank you. The combined application contains projects from 4 city departments, the General Services Department, which has 3 separate fueling stations, CNG fueling stations at street services yards, and a 4th one-pager that you'll see for the purchase of alternative fuel vehicles, including gasoline-electric hybrid sedans for the pool cars, as well as heavy-duty alternative fuel natural gas vehicles. The second department is the fire department. They'll be purchasing gasoline-electric hybrid sedans for their fleet. The Bureau of Sanitation, which has 2 one-pagers, one for the North Central Sanitation Yard, LNG and CNG fueling stations, a second one-pager for large purchase of solid waste collection vehicles, also alternative fuel. And the 4th department represented in the combined application is the Port of Los Angeles for their government fleet purchase. That includes a couple of electric vehicles, hybrids, and a natural gas fueling station upgrade. Most of these projects also requested match funding from the California Energy Commission. Those applications were due last week. We're waiting to hear whether that match will be granted. We should hear next Wednesday if those applications are invited to move on to a more complete application process. Excuse me. A few of the projects included also have local match funding through the South Coast AQMD's Carl Moyer Grant Program or the MSRC Grant Program. You see a number of those applications from time to time here. And most of the projects are actually budgeted in the department's budgets for the coming year. So the federal grant funding could relieve some of the burden on the general fund or bond sources of funding for these projects. I guess that's about the overview. If you'd like, I can move into item H, which is the Environmental Affairs Department's grants management.
Which ones were those of yours? Go start through all of them.
I will, if it's all right with you, introduce item H, which is the grants management element from the Environmental Affairs Department. And we have,
you said you have a one sheet. I'm not sure I've seen that.
Yes, there is a replacement one sheet available this morning. Here it is. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. You win it. As the lead on this combined application, the Environmental Affairs Department will be responsible for receiving any funds from the federal government and distributing those to each of the departments that have their own projects. In addition to that, we'll be responsible for compiling all of the reporting information, tracking the progress of the projects, looking at the jobs created or retained, keeping tabs on any of the outreach activities, and calculating the emission reductions generated, and pulling those all together in combined reports again to send off to the Department of Energy. This work is well above our current workload, and we do not anticipate that we could handle that with our existing staff, in particular with the approved budget. So we're requesting up to 4% of the total project cost, and I should back up and tell you that the combined application is $11.3 million of all those 4 departments worth of projects combined together into one application. So we are requesting 4% of the total project cost, of about $455,000, to fund 2 staff positions in the Environmental Affairs Department, one to handle the financial management of the grants, and the second to handle the outreach and reporting tasks.
So the grant requested is $455 for 2 positions?
Yes. Altogether, yes.
Okay, so will you just explain, because I guess, how is the rest of the money, because I don't assume are they both making $200,000 a year? I mean, how
That
is
would be probably over 2 years for each of those positions. So about $100,000 per year per position.
Per position, okay. And are these, I know, do you have to go through the process of getting, we're hiring them, we have a hiring freeze, so, coming through this, and these are positions that don't currently exist in the department?
One is a position that we're hoping to retain that was deleted in the fiscal year 10 budget, if that can be worked out. Okay. The second would likely be an as-needed temporary position hire.
Okay. And does this, because it doesn't say in this one sheet that it's a 2-year grant.
I apologize, the period of performance for these grants is actually 4 years. The funding needs to be spent, the vehicles purchased and deployed, and the construction projects constructed within the first 24 months, and then the second 24 months is for reporting.
Okay. And is there a match required?
There is, and we have indicated here a match against our current grant and mobile source staff in the Environmental Affairs Department, which is currently funded through the city's Mobile Source Trust Fund.
Okay. Mr. Parks?
Are the 2 positions we're talking about, were they cut out of the budget and we're replacing them, or are these brand new?
One was cut out of the budget, the financial position, the accounting position.
One was cut and the other one's brand new?
The other would be an as-needed request.
Okay. And just so I'm interpreting this properly, is that you're asking for a grant of $450-some thousand for 2 consecutive years? Is that what it is?
That would be the total amount over the 2-year period.
2-year period, so it's, but $455 for each of the 2 years, so that's where the 900 comes from?
I apologize. The 900,000 figure here incorporates our match, our in-kind match with our existing staff.
Our in-kind match are the positions that you're funding through another source?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So it would be the $455,000 once over a 2-year period.
Okay. And the source of those funds are available? There's no question?
The in-kind?
The in-kind?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Parks?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
You could join me up here if you wanted to. I feel very lonely up here on the days. Okay.
Ms. Perry's on her way. She's at AQMD.
Okay, so
a couple of votes and she'll be here.
great. Next item. Go back to B. Should we go back to the...
Did you want to have the individual departments come up and talk about their...
I think they should be here to be prepared, to
They're
give a
here
brief,
if you
yes,
do
to be a
wish
brief
to.
overview and then any questions that we might have.
Okay.
So the first one would be CRA. It seems pretty straightforward that it's going to be used to remove a tank underground. Are there other projects in the city that might be eligible for these grants that, where we are involved, where a tank needs to be removed?
One clarification, the tank at that site has already been removed just to clean up contamination left over.
Oh, I'm sorry, for the remediation of contaminated land.
Yes, but I believe there are sites that could be eligible. I have spoken with my counterpart EAD about proposing those sites to the state, so we will try to do that. The reason this site has gone forward is the state water board has said that this was the one they felt was the best option.
Option to go forward. So it's not. This isn't the one and only opportunity we have to apply for additional grants.
The money is given out to cities that own contaminated property where there's no responsible party, and it's only for petroleum contamination.
Okay.
So the CRA does own one more, and that one was not quite as far along in the process as this one, so this is why this is ahead. But if there's additional money that's available statewide, we will also put that one into the mix.
And are there, I mean, you're from CRA, so I just know you're looking at CRA properties. Are there other properties that are owned by the City of Los Angeles that would fit that same category? I know you don't know the answer to that, but I would look to the mayor's office and CAO. There are. Oh, you'll check. Okay.
They would have to be ones that the city was not responsible for the contamination, so
Right.
that would be a potential drawback.
Because hopefully we wouldn't have bought land that, had contamination on it, but you never know. Any other questions, Mr. Parks, on this one? Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll approve that one. Next item. Item C, general services for the Advanced Technology Vehicle Pilot Program. I'm sorry? We're on C.
C.
Morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Good. Steve Hillman, Department of General Services, Fuel Services, Environmental Compliance Division.
Okay. Can you just give us a brief overview?
Items C.
Yes.
Excuse me, I just want to make sure that she had a microphone.
Okay, yeah, because there's a few of these. So C, D.
Well, C, J, and K all address CNG infrastructure. I didn't know if you wanted to take all
Sure,
those.
we'll take them all. So C, J, and K, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
These are 3 CNG fueling stations, primarily aimed at fueling Bureau of Street Services street sweepers. They have a time fill component, like I said, generally to fuel street sweepers. There will be another fast fill component that will be available to fuel other additional CNG vehicles.
And is there a match requirement as well?
Correct. There's a 50% match required for these.
And where will we be getting that?
We are funded for these projects in our budget. We also have, for 2 of the projects, we have some MSRC, Clean Transportation Funding grants that are in place.
So I know, particularly on item C, that there's a $350,000 grant that's been awarded for that, for the $1 million. So will they accept currently funded kind of projects as the match? Or do they require new match? Or
I believe they will accept that as a match. The dates that they worry about is more when the construction is started and the actual performance period of the project. But this current MSRC grant does qualify for local match funding.
for the match for that one? But I'm just asking, for the rest of them, if we say we were already funding this project to go forward, but the time, will they accept the funding that had already been in place as the match?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Parks?
Let me just ask you, when you say it's funded in your budget, what specific source of funds?
They're MICLA funded 0708.
And that's for all 3, or are we just dealing with C?
All 3.
Okay.
And if we do, sorry, Mr. Parks, if I jump in, if we had not, if we don't receive this money, what would happen? It would just be a longer period of time in which we'd be able to get them operational, or?
No, like I say, we are funded. This would be a reimbursement to the city. We're fully funded for these projects.
Okay. So that will reduce our MICLA debt obligation, Mr. Parks, I guess. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. Great, thank you. So now we've taken care of B, C, H, J, and K, so that would mean D, I think. Go back to D.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Brian Bass, General Services, Fleet Services Division.
Do you want to give us just a quick overview?
Okay, great. As you see before you, this is for the purchase of alternative fueled vehicles in the, excuse me, the area of 20 CNG street sweepers, 4 CNG dump trucks, 2 CNG truck tractors, and 1 CNG catch basin sewer cleaner truck.
There's also a match, and so that will be existing.
Right, this is a 50-50 match. It's currently funded with current year MICLA funding and sewer construction maintenance funding for the sewer cleaner truck. Again, we have full funding already set aside for that, and this is reimbursable if we do get the grant award.
Mr. Parks?
Yeah. Could you explain just on the, when we say that the 50% is absorbed in the base cost, what does that mean?
That would be,
I believe the intent there is to say that the city will be covering the base cost of the vehicle. The grant is available for the incremental cost, and so
The city's buying a vehicle and the incremental cost is enhancing the vehicle, is that what we're saying?
yes. So the federal grant would cover that enhancement.
That's the enhancement. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We have approval on that, Mr. Parks?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That would take us to E. Solid waste. Solid. The last one was street sweepers, dump trucks, and tractors, and these are going to have a lot of energy-efficient vehicles that in our big trucks.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Ishlan Tak, Bureau of Sanitation.
John Moore, Bureau of Sanitation.
Yes, we actually have 2 projects, E and I. One, E is for the purchase of over 130 clean fuel vehicles for our solid waste collection fleet, and the I is the construction of our North Central LNG, LCNG fueling station to support the fueling of the 130 vehicles there at the North Central yard. So the vehicles we have currently, the solid waste collection vehicle fleet, we have over 300 clean fuel, and this year we're slowly receiving over about 100 new vehicles. That's also clean fuel, and with these additional 130, so that would bring us to about over 50% of our fleet that are clean fuel. And so the project's about $40 million for the trucks, and we're seeking funding for the incremental cost of these vehicles. The base cost, again, is being covered by the city, and we've already secured, we received an award from Carl Moyer for these trucks for $1.6 million, and we are additionally seeking for more funding with Carl Moyer and also MSRC. And for this project, for the federal, we're looking for $2.2 million for the remainder of the incremental cost.
So E is for 2.2 million, and then I is for 3.7.
That's correct.
Okay. And so as the match requirement, common theme, is they both require a match. Some, I think on the one, the question Mr. Parks had asked before is absorbed in the base cost of the vehicle.
That's right. The base cost, we are basically matching the grant funding.
And on the subsequent one on I?
On I, the North Central Fueling Station, the cost is about $7.4 million to construct. and we are seeking 50% funding, and that's 3.4 million. And we've already secured, we've been awarded from MSRC about 400,000 and we are matching the rest. So,
And you're asking for the rest from the California Energy Commission, correct? If we don't receive that, how do we meet the match?
actually, the California Energy Commission, we're also seeking for 400,000. But for the federal, we are seeking 50%, which is 3.4 million, 3.7, I apologize. And if we don't receive the match funding, we have funding in the 0506 bond, so we have money set aside for that already.
Okay. Mr. Parks?
You said 06 or
0506.
0506 bond, yes.
Which bond is that?
Apologize. One moment, please. It's the sanitation equipment charge, revenue bond request. It's 0506.
Okay. And then you said on the matching, you're applying for $3 million on the federal and $400,000 from the California Energy Commission?
That's correct. That's cost share by the...
And that's dealing with both E and I?
The 400,000, that would only be for the North Central Fueling Station.
The 400,000 is for I only. What on E they show that you're talking about California Energy? What do we expect from them on E?
Yes, the federal, they are willing to fund up to 100% of the incremental cost. And since we've already received an award for $1.6 million, the incremental cost is about $3.8 million. Yeah, and the difference with the incremental cost is the diesel cost versus the new engines. So there's about $30,000 each vehicle. So with the car mower, we have to subtract the $1.6 million to what we're requesting with the federal. And so that's why we've come up with a $2.2 million request with the federal. But for the CEC, to address your question, I apologize for that, forgetting that. We are looking for 50% cost share with the federal in the event that the federal does not fund the $2.2 million, so they would cover the remainder.
When you say, did you say the name of the grant is Paul Moyer?
Carl Moyer. Carl Moyer program.
Carl?
Carl. C-A-R-L.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we will approve E and I. Right? And I. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one is F.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Captain John Holmes, and I'm the Director of Operations for the Port of Los Angeles. First, let me apologize. This grant started out as a $30 million grant, and then based on a clarification letter we received this week from the Department of Energy, we found that we were, I guess you would say, sort of pushing the envelope on requesting additional funding for electric trucks. So not wanting to jeopardize the grant by asking for something that was on the cusp,
High end.
we decided to pull the grant back to $15 million and focus on those technologies which we were sure were eligible for funding, which is basically a conversion from diesel trucks to LNG trucks. So that's why A and F seem to be at odds with each other. But the grant is a $15 million grant, which is going to focus on converting existing older diesel trucks to clean 07 compliant LNG trucks. It is a $15 million grant. $7.5 million would be our match. That amount of money is in the 09-010 port budget, And also, we are asking the California Energy Commission to help us fund this. So we have the funding to pay for it if we have to match the 50%, but if we are fortunate, as we were on the first DOE grant, which was the electrification grant, we did get a pledge from the California Energy Commission to fund half of the half, or 25% of the share. So this would be for converting diesel to LNG trucks and infrastructure for the trucks, because as we bring more and more LNG trucks into the port this year, and our goal is 1,000, we need additional infrastructure, fueling infrastructure, or we're not going to make this conversion successful. We already have 2 fueling facilities and are working with AQMD on funding a third. This would fund 3 smaller facilities, because those companies that get sizable alternative fuel fleets typically want to fuel their trucks at their own facilities, and we would use some of this funding to help people install their own fueling facilities, with the caveat that they allow those facilities to be open to other companies. That's the way we've done it in the past, and it's been successful. So it's a $15 million grant, and it would be for conversion of older diesel trucks to 2007 compliant LNG trucks.
Okay, so we also have it as 5,000. Is it 15,000 or 5,000? It's million, excuse me, I meant million. On one of the one sheets we have, its amount requested was changed from 15 million to 5 million.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, it is. Let me think of the total. I'd have to... whatever is on the... I think it is a $5 million grant, I'm sorry.
Okay. So, and you're asked, it's a total, what we have our notes here, that it's, the total project cost is $10 million.
Right.
That we're requesting $5 million from the Fed and $5 million from the California Energy Commission.
No, we can't get $5 million from the California Energy Commission. We could get $5 million from the Department of Energy, and then $2.5 million from the California Energy Commission, which we would match with $2.5 million out of our own budget.
Out of your own budget. And you've identified, I'm sorry if I missed, did you identify where that $2.5 million is coming out of your budget?
We budgeted $44 million for alternative fuel vehicles, and that will cover a number of the projects that we're asking funding for. It's a bit of a calculus, simply because we're asking for a number of different projects from DERA and DOE, but the $44 million we've set aside, which will be largely funded from tariff revenue for the Clean Truck Program, will be used for the matching for this and any number of grants that we're successful at. We're trying to manage the funding such that we don't overextend ourselves, but also ask for enough grants so that we ensure we get some funding for the trucks. So we have a limitation of $44 million for this program.
Okay. Mr. Parks?
No questions.
No questions? Okay. Thank you. Next item, since we've skipped all this, are we on G? I made notes on one of these and I can't. Is that our next item? Oh, sorry, I missed here. Going back to my list. So G, we have G and L left.
Okay. Item G is also from the Port of Los Angeles, but it is included in the combined application that EAD will send forward. The components of this project are replacement of 2 gasoline utility trucks with electric trucks, upgrade of a construction and maintenance facility for CNG fuels, and replacement of 4 sedans with hybrid electric vehicles. The request from the Clean Cities grant is $700,000, again to maximize the amount available to fund the incremental cost. And our understanding is that a grant request was also submitted to the CEC for $447,000 to match the vehicle components of this, not the fueling station component, but the vehicles component of this. My understanding is that the balance of the match is funded through the Port Department budget.
He's shaking his head, yes. What happens, this is a general, maybe looking at the mayor's office and CAO, if we don't get, I mean, there's a number of these that are CEC grants that we're asking for, and if we don't get the grants and we've applied for it, are we going to have departments come back and say, well, we got the grant, we have to find the additional money here in the city of Los Angeles? I think that's the fear, because we don't have a whole lot of extra money. Is there a process where we then just reject the grant? Handle that?
Yeah.
I believe when we receive a notice of a grant award, we would be coming back to you for the authority to accept those funds, and at that time we would have to identify match funding. If we could not come up with it, we may be in the position of having to turn down a grant. I should note also on the Port of LA Government Fleet Project, I understand that the fueling station component is not funded in the port's budget, so if that grant funding is not received, that portion of the project would not move forward. The vehicles would still be purchased.
And on this item, it says the number of 2 gasoline utility trucks. How much of the port sedan fleet is still not hybrid at this time? And I know have the number of CNG suppliers increased as demand has gone up? I know there was a limited number of suppliers in the past.
Well, again, Captain Holmes again, I'm also responsible for the construction and maintenance department and our fleet. Our fleet is largely CNG. All of our pool cars are CNG, and most of the other cars are either CNG or hybrid. We have not bought a non-alternative fuel vehicle unless there was no other option. So I don't have the specific numbers, but all of our pool cars, like the city pool cars, are CNG, and we do have some hybrids on the larger cars where CNG isn't available, and then we do fund some diesels as well. This particular grant will take some of the older vehicles and convert them over, but anything we buy is an alternative fuel vehicle unless there's no option.
Ms. Perry?
I have a question. As we trade out old fleet vehicles, even here in City Hall and where you're located, where do they go, or where are they sold? I assume they're sold on auction or something like that. But we are upgrading our fleet with CNG and the clean and hybrid vehicles, and so what do we do as we dispose of the old ones?
Well, we have a program that when vehicles get to certain benchmarks, they're looked at, and then once the vehicles are determined to be sold, they're sold at auction, and we pool our vehicles with the rest of the city. The port does not separately have a sale of vehicles. All of the city vehicles are pooled together and sold.
And they get sold and then are repopulating this region, or are they sold into, where do they go?
I believe they could, and I'm not an expert on this, I believe at the auction pretty much anybody can come and buy a vehicle if they so desire. Those vehicles that are not used by the city anymore.
Okay, so that's the next phase of what we need to work on, because that means they're basically getting back out there, even though we're upgrading our fleet, which is a good thing. They're still getting out there, and
that's
the emissions issues are still out there. They may be dispersed.
And that's an excellent point. And one of the components of our clean truck program, and one of the requirements from the federal government and the state government, is you don't replace an old vehicle and leave it in service. You take an old vehicle out of service and replace it with a new alternative fuel or late model compliant vehicle.
By the time they're out to auction, is their lifespan fairly limited?
In most cases, yes, particularly in this economic environment. We take a look at our vehicles. We have vehicles that run 100,000 miles. Of course, as you know, vehicles today have a tendency to run longer than they did even 10 years ago. Right. But they're pretty worn by the time that any of the city departments gets rid of their vehicles.
Okay.
Excuse me, if I might add, there are some newer grant requirements, in particular through the Carl Moyer program, that vehicles not be resold in the state if they're being replaced with vehicles under Carl Moyer grant funding. So we are beginning to see some specific requirements for replaced vehicles to be sold, not in this air basin.
Thank you.
Mr. Parks?
Let me ask, earlier in your comments, you mentioned that G is being covered under an umbrella of another proposal. Which proposal was that? You said it's included?
Oh, I apologize. This is included in the combined application that the Environmental Affairs Department will be putting forward. Even though it is with the Port of Los Angeles, it was a smaller sort of
Is it something that was approved before, or is it part of this package?
It is part of this package.
Which number,
today.
what letter is it?
It goes together with items H, C, D, E.
Okay, so this is, part of that overall package.
Part of that overall.
Let me just ask for the CAO, one of the items that came up in the budget hearings recently is that the CAO is going to be looking at revamping the way we've done NICOLA funding in the future. And one of the things that they are looking at is weaning us off of using NICOLA for equipment and going back to its original intent for bricks and mortars and structure. So that needs to be put into consideration. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, but the issue is as we go forward, if NICOLA is being considered, particularly if it's new NICOLA, we need to be aware of just where that policy is going.
And if I may, there was an excellent question addressed earlier about what you do if you get a grant and you don't have the money. We have, I can speak for the port, have commiserated over that because, you really have to ask for probably more grants than you expect to get in order to get your fair share of the funding. But what we have gone into this process deciding is that if we oversubscribe ourselves and get a grant, we may be faced with the reality of turning down the grant just simply because we don't have the money to fund it. So we're only going to go to a certain amount and not come back to the Board of Harbor Commissioners, in our case, asking for more money just because we've been more fortunate in our applications than we expected. But, we're asking for a lot of money, and a lot of people are asking for a lot of money, so we feel like we have to maximize our opportunity and be prepared to, turn a grant down if necessary because the funding isn't there. We look at these grants almost like job applications. Just because you get the job offer doesn't mean you have to take it. Yeah. So we're very much aware of the funding constraints, and we're not going to oversubscribe ourselves simply because we're more fortunate than we expected. Yeah. And I know that's a concern, and it's a concern with our Board of Harbor Commissioners, and certainly a concern of the Council, I'm sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll have you approved. We'll go to our last item. Quickly, we have Council Item L. Yes, that is also part of the combined application that EAD will be putting forward. I don't see our representative from the Fire Department, so I will just very briefly state that this grant request is to cover the incremental cost of purchase of 38 hybrid electric vehicles for the Fire Department's pool fleet. We're pleased with this to be beginning to work hybrid electric vehicles into the public safety fleets. It looks as though the balance of the cost is funded through MICLA funding as well. Mr. Parks, do you have any questions? No. Yeah, Ms. Perry? No. Okay. Thank you. So, unless there's no other questions, that'll be, we'll receive and file item A, which was the other one. And we'll move these forward to council. Thank you. Thank you. Who's going to take their flag?
did adjourn the meeting. Did you? I did adjourn the meeting, yes.